Good good evening, everyone. Um, I think much anticipated book as we're about to read today. It is this one right here. We are reading Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. Yeah, listen, it was quite a book. First of all, it was quite big. It is very big, and as I was saying before we started recording, I started reading it, and after a certain amount of time, I thought to myself, okay, wait, let me actually listen to this because it's quite a big book. So I'd rather me have listening. In fact, when I go to work, I drive 40 Ks to work, 40 Ks back from work.
Wow.
At least it's a good time. It was a good time to listen to it. So it actually helped in that way. But yeah, just by the show of hands, let's first start by that. By the show of hands, who has read Elon Musk?
Read or listened?
Listened and read, I think it's the same thing.
Okay, I did.
Yeah.
Doc, you read it. Mr. Guy said, have you read it? Angie, you said you read it.
Mm-hmm.
Who else has read it?
I
Half
have.
through, yeah. Half through.
I feel like even if you read like half of it, the way it's so enticing, this book, it's it's really. I was speaking to Doc the other day, and it really took me on an emotional roller coaster, to say the least, because the
Yeah.
amount of you start off by feeling sad about him, and then you eventually go into this inspired because this guy has a go get attitude, and then you
Mm.
end up like despising in a way, and then you end up say feeling sorry. Like it is such such an emotional roller coaster. So okay, let me give you a background for those that haven't read it. So by now, I'm guessing everyone does know Elon Musk. He is the richest man in the world. And to say that he's the richest man in the world because he got lucky is not, it's not even close for him. He did not get lucky. He made his own like this man. Um, Comes from South Africa. Who knew that the richest man in the world would ever come from South Africa? But yes, richest man in the world comes from South Africa. Born in Pretoria, went to Pretoria Boys High, then moved to Canada. He actually wanted to move into America, but he couldn't get into America. So and he has family in Canada. So he moves into Canada. And from Canada, he studies. From the studying in Canada, he transfers into America. And literally, that's how he got into America, just to live and work there and start business there. But early on, they speak about in the book, it speaks about how he was like I said, South African. His parents actually, his mom's mom and dad come from Canada, and his dad's parents come from South Africa. And his mom's mom, they move to South Africa, and eventually, mom and dad meet. And at the time, and in the book, it talks about, and I'm not going to go through the whole beginning of this, but in the book, it talks about how Elon's dad is such a what's the right word to use? I want to write. We'll use the right word for this, but he shoots from the hip, to say it with lack of better words. Really shoots from the hip. He's a person that at one moment he'll be doing one thing, and then next moment he thinks something up and he does it out of the spur of the moment. I mean, funny thing is, they then get when they got, I think people had been telling Elon's mom to not marry Elon's father, and eventually she marries him, and then they go on honeymoon in France, and while they're there in France, they have a fight. And eventually, when they come back, they want to divorce, but Elon's mom just finds out that she's pregnant with Elon. And I think at first they wanted to um, name him after the region that he got pregnant in. I'm not sure if it was like Nice or whatever. But then eventually they decide no, they'll name Elon after, I think, one of the grandfathers or something like that. But long story cut short, they have three kids. Eventually they get divorced. and the mom moves to Durban. They move in with the mom. The mom is hustling. While she's hustling, and I can say basically the hustle for me when I see Elon comes from the mom more than anything else. But in any case, she's a single mom with 3 kids, and she starts hustling in Durban to with 2 or 3 jobs or something like that. And eventually, Elon, at the age, I think when he just goes into high school, decides he wants to move he wants to move to Pretoria with his dad. Hence, going into Pretoria Boys High. In the time, he was bullied, and um, I'm, I, I can't say that. I think the dad didn't necessarily feel sorry for him. Like I said, the dad is not really clued up upstairs, to say the least. And the reason I'm saying that, as I'll tell you later. So as he moves in with his dad, 2 years later, his brother comes in, and he moves back in with Elon and his dad. And eventually, after high school, Elon moves to Canada to study. Or in fact, at first he moved there because he wanted to get away from South Africa. And in the time, he then starts studying. And as he studies, his brother comes in. And look, I'm fast forwarding because this book has so much detail. In any case, he starts studying, and his brother comes to Canada as well. They eventually start a business together. When he is in America, they start a startup. Forgot the name of the business actually, but they then eventually sell it. They sell this business, and Elon says, "Okay, I want to start a payment system." In the time he starts this payment system, that's the same payment system that is going to merge with PayPal, with the guys from PayPal. And in that time, I think there's someone we read about, Doc. I forgot who it was, but the person was so passionate about. I think it was no, it's actually on Steve Jobs. The way they get so passionate about what they do, it becomes very childish like, they become very sour in a certain sense. And that actually comes from Twitter, but he wants to call it x.com, and they go back and forth, and he throws a fit, and eventually they overrule him. He's like, it's fine. They name it PayPal after the payment methods that the guys from PayPal at the time had come up with. At the time as well, he wants to make this PayPal into a now he's the biggest shareholder, but he doesn't have the final say, though. The final voting, they could outvote him basically. But in the time, he wants to become what's this? Oh, he wants this PayPal to become a multi platform, like a social media platform, a payment system. He wants to make it an all-in-one system. Think of WeChat in what it is before WeChat was an idea to these people. And what then happens is then he gets to they overrule him about that, and in him being overruled, he almost like moves away from it. In fact, there's one moment actually in the book before they go into, and this is a famous story, but before they go into this thing where they which is the co-founder of the other company, which is now PayPal, obviously, ride in this. And then whilst they're in there, now this is the kind of mind Elon has. He goes, he goes all the way to the wall. Like he doesn't look back. So Peter Thiel asks him, so what can this car do? And he's like, just look and see. And he floors it. And he acceleration so hard. He accelerates so hard that eventually that car gets rich. About 20 million or something, but in any case, he's now driving and he crashes this car, basically almost kills the two of them, but they go unscratched. In fact, at the time they were going to sign the deal for PayPal to be sold, if I'm not mistaken. And they get out with one or two scratches, but they hitch a ride with some other person. They get to the place, they sign off like nothing ever happened. Like these guys actually didn't come from an accident. So that's literally, that is who Elon is. He he's intrinsic is maybe intrinsic is not the right word, but he is like his dad, where he also just he shoots from the hip. He thinks of something. If it makes sense for him, he goes all the way with it. So after that, they obviously sell PayPal to eBay. They get the money. At the time, Elon wants to go into space because he has this thought. In fact, there's a book, one of his favorite books, not his favorite books, is called, wait, actually, I have it. I actually read it before, funny thing. I've read the
Hitchhiker's
book
Guide.
before.
The Hitchhiker's
Hitchhiker's
Guide to the
Guide.
Galaxy.
Yeah.
Yes, Hitchhiker's Guide. It's fun. It's in fact, when I heard that it's his favorite book, I went and read it again, and it just gave me that.
Also,
Yeah, no, this book. It's such a brilliant book. It really is
yeah,
a brilliant book. Even though it's fiction, it plays with your mind of how reality is, in the world in itself. But then, so one as this is his favorite book, he's always had this wondering to have the world as a multi-planetary civilization. Like people live in Mars, they can go visit Earth to go see their parents or something. I don't know what he's thinking is. That's exactly what he does. So he goes out and says, okay, he wants a rocket. Obviously, he has so much money now, but he wants a rocket. He says he's only willing to spend, I think at the time it was like, I want to say 20 or 30 million. Or it was something like that, even or 3 million, I don't know. But in any case, he wants to spend a sum of money, X amount of money. And then he goes, okay, no one in America will sell a rocket to him in a way, but he says, okay, let me go to Russia, because he has a guy that knows a guy in Russia that they could possibly sell him a rocket to. He goes to Russia, he gets there, he tries to get this rocket. In him trying to get this rocket, he doesn't succeed. And that's the long story cut short. These guys want to undercut, and he eventually says to himself, but what does the rocket actually need? Because these guys are really, they're ridiculous with their price. He then has this thing called an idiot, is it an idiot barometer? Yeah, an idiot index. Yes, an idiot index, where he says, okay, how much does it actually cost to build this? And what is the first principles around building this? And if this thing costs X amount away from what it actually costs to make it, they're idiots. Why would we actually spend that much money if we can pay for someone to do it for less money? And then eventually, that's basically how SpaceX actually started. That he builds his own rocket, and now he wants to build his own rocket that he can reuse, and then he goes from there into building them going into orbit. At the time, I think maybe going into SpaceX. When I say this man doesn't hold back, they tell a part in the story where he was gambling with his friends, but just a normal poker game with his friends, and he's a person that goes all in all the time. And he went all in, he lost. And then he went all in again, I think, and then he lost again. And then he brought himself back into the game, and he went all in and he won everything. After that, he literally won everything. He wiped everyone off and he won the game. Now, that's literally what he does in every single thing he does. He goes all in. He doesn't hold back. He goes, like I said, goes into SpaceX. At the time, I think they did the first test flight. The thing exploded, the rocket exploded. They do the second one. They do the second one, it explodes again. They do the third one, it explodes again. Now, after this, he has no money. If they fail on the fourth one, literally, and they needed this fourth one to work because NASA had a contract out to give, to give them 10 billion for sending out satellites and eventually, obviously, payload into the Earth or into orbit, or even the people to the space station. So the last one is like the last, and you can think of it also as he's literally went all the way with this one, and he's like, look, if we fail, it doesn't matter, it is what it is, but we will not stop until we make it. As long as we have something, we will not stop. without saying, it actually worked out for them, and they took the first payload into orbit. Now, let me maybe what, Doc, maybe another 5 minutes or so, or because I know I don't want to. Yeah. So eventually, he then goes. They make it. They get the 10 billion. They start building SpaceX. In that time, he has another idea with I mean, not an idea per se, but he wants to go into electrifying vehicles, you know. And he gets these guys, these two founders of this car company named Tesla. He then goes to them and says, "Okay, well, I want to invest." I think he invested. He has majority share. For those that don't know, Elon is actually technically not the founder of Tesla, but because he has so much stake in it, people almost think that he is. And yes, and we know him by Tesla, you know. And yeah, so he gets into he invests into this company, Tesla, and we now know what Tesla is. Like I said, I'm just fast forwarding everything. Now, I think one story that I need to tell is how he actually basically became the richest man in the world. There's a time in Tesla that he that obviously Tesla is now trading public, and he goes to the board and says, "Listen, we will make Tesla profitable, but by a certain time it will happen." So he bets with not bets per se, but basically there were these hedge funds guys and whatever that were shorting the stock of Tesla. And the board was on his neck now because Tesla's not making a profit. Obviously, they opened up the factory and everything, and the cars that they're churning out within the factory isn't enough for the people to actually be to take Tesla serious, basically. And the number was like 5,000. He needs to get to 5,000 cars a week that this factory is churning out. And what happens is that he goes onto this thing, they call it demon mode, where he's all focused into this. He's focused. He's a problem, basically, where he makes sure everything is done. The idiot index comes out. The first principle. One thing that I really appreciate about Elon is he works on first principles, and that's one thing I guess that got him to where he is he questions everything all the way down to a first principle and works himself all the way up so that he can come up with a better way to do that very thing that he's trying to do. And then he goes, so in that he basically goes to the board and says, "Listen, if I don't have 5,000 cars by, I think it was like the first quarter or the second or third quarter of Tesla's financial year, I don't get paid anything. But if I do, I will get, you give me stock and I'll get paid on the stock that I get." Now, I think he gets it, like he literally has a day to spare before earnings come out, and he makes it. 5,000 car in a week churns out of the factory, and people are shocked. I mean, the whole market goes crazy and the stock climbs, and all the people that were shorting are obviously losing their money now. And they lose so much money, and he gains obviously so much shares, which gives him so much stock, which makes him the richest man eventually in the world in like 2021. Not in, but eventually in 2021. So that's who Elon is. He like I said, he takes me. There's so many things in this book that I don't even think one person. We would need double the time to actually talk about all the stories, from why he has many kids. I mean, he has kids that with a lady that works under him, you know. But it's not to say that they didn't even sleep together. He was just a donor because he believes both her genes and his genes will make great kids or make great offspring, because both of them are clever. Literally, that's how he thinks. And on Twitter, for instance, I think Twitter was the first company I want to say that kind of challenged him mentally. You know, really, really challenged him. I think psychologically, it really challenged him, and you could see it in that whole chapter when he wanted to buy Twitter, when he eventually wanted to make it X.com, when he made it into X.com. And the thinking around that is, because I couldn't make PayPal that, I'll make X.com into it. And then the last thing maybe I want to say before I hand over to the others that are read is that I realized when I read this book how much power Elon has. Like I was actually talking to Doc as well. Like, after I think Ben Franklin is the next best person I could equate Elon Musk to. Like, we have the Bill Gates, the of the world, Steve Jobs, and all of these guys that really have put, like Amazon, all of these guys that have done amazing things, but no one has come even close to what Elon is doing. I mean, everything he touches literally. In fact, I'm so confident in that Twitter will probably, if it goes public again, will make him another who knows how much. But he has so much power. He thinks in a way that no one in this world probably thinks. I mean, he was born. He has a brother and a sister, and they also obviously are very clever, but they're not even close to being like him. And the things, like I said, it's at the end, and maybe we'll talk about it at the end. But for what it is, for me, like what this guy is doing and has done, no one comes even close in my mind to what he's doing. And in the wake of him doing what he does, he left people on the wayside. And what I mean by that is he almost doesn't care about people. He cares about the end goal of what he's trying to build. And that's what makes him so such a force to be reckoned with, because he doesn't care. As long as we build it, people need to get to Mars. That's all he thinks about. If you're not going to make it happen, leave. I'll get someone else that will make it happen with me. And one thing I really do appreciate, though, about him is he does get his hands dirty. He's not a CEO that says, oh, we'll give someone. And no, he's confident enough in his abilities that he goes into a company, takes over, he does whatever he needs to do, but he gets people to answer to him, and he sits within the technical side of how things are made, so that he can actually hasten things. Because if he knows that if he doesn't get things moving, nothing will ever be done. And that's the thinking he has, and I really do appreciate that about him. So with that said, I want to give other people a chance, and at the end we'll probably just give final remarks, because I have a really interesting final remark that I want to share with everyone. But yeah, maybe Tabo, I know you have read this book. Do you maybe want to go and speak about it? Give your 2 cents about it.
You just started with Angie. I'm always picked on when I come here.
Because you have such vast knowledge.
No, because
you want to start with me?
But let me start, because if I'm not structured, then I won't have to match Angie's level of structured, coherent review. The last thing that you ended with to say is really hands-on. First, I like the book a lot, and I feel like I will read it over and over again. And I was one of those people that thought, oh, I've got a cute club member learning to read already. So I think I just thought, it's another biography. And at some point, I think we created this grand thing out of Steve Jobs, that you think, it's just going to be another rich guy. And, we got the wow of Steve Jobs and the guy with Virgin. I wasn't really looking forward to reading another billionaire book. But when I read it, I realized he's like miles apart and so different from them. First, because I was like, you can't replicate what he has, because it comes with he's on a spectrum, right? He's got Asperger's that is undiagnosed, his bipolar is undiagnosed. So that's
what he says, that's what he tells us.
But I mean, you can see when you look at him that he's on a spectrum, right? And like the Asperger's, that's what makes him cold. So it's not cold because he's an asshole. He's cold because there's a part of his brain that simply is not wired to be that compassionate, right? But then as you read about it, you realize that it's actually not as not compassionate as it's almost like he uses it to his advantage, and that's why it's like I'm undiagnosed, and when it's convenient he uses it. But I also find him to be quite a blame shifter. Like he's very shy to take accountability when something goes wrong. He looks for people around him, and that's why they're like it's very easy for him to call people idiots. Maybe hence the idiot index. But I think in the third space shuttle, he blamed somebody, and it turned out it wasn't the guy's fault, and he never really said sorry. And even people that work with him, they're like he's very quick to look around and find people to blame. If he very rarely takes accountability. And I felt sorry for him. I think it was I rolled with the emotions because you realize he feels very deeply, even though he's supposed to be cut off and cold, but he feels very deeply. Like with the Tesla guys were wrong in sort of like taking credit publicly for them not having the innovation. Like they had an idea, but he innovated this machine. Every single piece of it, the design, the weight, every single piece of manufacturing. So you kind of like, as you said, sometimes you feel sorry for him. Sometimes you're like, oh, he's an asshole. But you buy into him. And then there was like Amber Heard out of nowhere. I'm like, oh God, this girl is like a demon. And he actually helped bail her out in the divorce. She was like the only friend left. And thinking, he doesn't have emotional intelligence in methods of life. And even like with the Johnny Depp thing, he was the only person bailing her out and all of that. But I kind of feel like, and also that I like the first principles theory and how he thinks about it. As an entrepreneur, when you go for training, I think that's why we're all here, and Dr. Roche, with the people that you deal with. And I've seen myself failing to, like, I produce honey, just failing to itemize what it takes at the cost of everything that it takes that goes into my honey bottle. And the honey was easier, actually. I could do that. I could even say, for me to brand my bottle, it cost me 17 rands, and every time it changes, I've got an Excel sheet to that. And the other day I was creating a deodorant from honey and beeswax and whatever. I had like 17 products in front of me, and I could list all of them, but I couldn't itemize what each drop of, if I'm using essential oil, how many drops in a bottle, what does it cost, and then you cost it properly. And I thought that's something that we could learn from him, that we could practice, that doesn't take exceptional intelligence, but that whole first principle on idiot index. And I think that's something that in our businesses, we probably very high on the index. And we could easily, with everything we do, sort of simplify and, learn to say, it should cost me this much and I can reduce this and I can change that. So we don't think like that, but that's something that's so simple. It's quite interesting. I also love the fact that he thinks regulations are recommendations, and he challenges every single recommendation. Having come from a legal space and having engaged in like 5 years of questioning laws that are in place, and I think I did Chinese law. Chinese people make up laws all the time. When you talk to them, they're like, the Chinese government says, and of course they just say there's no such thing and nobody said that. And why do you think things operate that way? Like, I'm constantly in arguments with Chinese people about their rules and laws and regulations. So I kind of like that attitude. I work in a university space. Something goes wrong. One person does some stupid thing, and then there's a policy to prevent that risk of that thing ever happening again. And you realize that it was just a reaction to deal with one situation that's been created into policy. And I think even government does that. People do that. They come up with policies or laws to fix or prevent or manage one isolated thing. So I like how he actually pushes and how he actually says, if it's not physics, it's a recommendation. And people don't even know the laws that they've put in place. So I like that he questions, and it could also be a lawyer. You could end up his life as a lawyer. Then I also like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where he says, it's not about the answer, is are we asking the right questions? I think the answer is like 43 or 34. You go all over the galaxy and then you come up with a question. And it was like,
I think it's 43, yes.
43, and it's like, maybe we didn't even begin by asking the right questions. And what my favorite quote is not in the book, but in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I read it almost like 25 years ago. And one of the characters says, the most useless people in the world are marketers. they should just put them in a shuttle and send them off to space, and they should never come back. And I used to love that because people think I've got a marketing brain, but I hate good marketers. I used to think, put them on in a shuttle and send them all out. And that's kind of how you feel about people, like, just take all the idiots, put them in the shuttle and send them out. But overall, I feel like he's got a very benevolent, he's got so much power, but the difference between him and Gates is in that application of power, that if Gates had like 10% of power and Elon had 90, Gates' thing is like self-power of just the greed of being able to control and everything. And Elon's whole drive, I mean, once in a while, he went to the Tesla, I think he gets distracted once in a while when he did like the Tesla, the X. When you look at what he was saying about PayPal being a centralized thing, and then there was WeChat, and everyone was like, "Oh, you can't have that," and he was cutting the banks out of the system because they were messing up everybody. He was doing it for efficiency, not for I want to control everything. But everyone was like, that will be too much power if you control financial flows like that between consumers and the market. And also with SpaceX, for him, it's like a real serious fear that as humanity, we are so dumb with being left behind and we're not intergalactic species. Why are we not, why are we not trying to do it? Then that's when I thought it's okay for him to have power because think of the greater good. Obviously there's going to be a few people that he offends, but he hasn't killed anybody. Like when you look at what happened with COVID and how many people were killed and people that are trying to deal with population oversize, like that are trying to control human. He's just like, I want to add to humanity, not control what's going on. So I kind of like that. And I was also quite impressed because we constantly read about this guy with like this, he's putting up 100 million now in X. And it's only when you read the book, you realize how SpaceX is making money and how it's revolutionizing parts of industry, like, using an air conditioner to replace it with something that's been like a couple of 100 million rands. And now NASA has to buy parts from him. And how he also centralized everything inside. It's like, because the Russians were doing this thing that they kept on taking the price up every time he talked. Yes. And he realized these people, like, you're not going to win here. And he realized you have to actually, his model of doing everything in-house, not for the sake, it wasn't a business model. It was more of that whole
survival.
It was survival. It was efficiency. Yes. So in ways that the way he crafts strategy, it's not how a business school will tell you this is how you craft strategy. There's strategy 1 and there's like 8 strategies. Do you want to do this? Do you want to centralize, decentralize? For him, it's like out of necessity. Everything is done out of necessity. What needs to be done and how do you need to succeed more than anything. So I kind of like that approach. Sort of that's how you craft strategy to solve new problems that nobody else has actually solved. So I'd say overall, also in terms of it as a book, there were some areas where I think it's unnecessary. I came out of it thinking I really like him now, but I don't like how he hates South Africa because he's like, this country is trying to kill him. And every time he sees South Africa, like, it's almost like the land has a personal vendetta against him. So it's sad that we, as South Africans, we can't leverage that because it's never going to feel aligned with us. But I liked it, except that I think as a blame shifter, that bothers me that he doesn't take accountability. But generally, I think it's got a good, it's got a good sense, and it's doing what needs to be done for greater humanity, and it's having sleepless nights out of like a big vision and a benevolent vision. So I'm quite happy. And I think I'm going to read his other books because there's a lot of books about him on the market that
I know there's one that is also quite big. It's also, I think it's called Musk or something like that.
Yeah.
It was done quite a few years ago, just after PayPal and those kind of things. I think that's when there was released, when you're just at Tesla, when you're starting. But it'll be interesting to read that one, yeah.
And I think that the structure of the book is what bothered me a little bit. That I think Isaacson maybe is renowned biographers, but he wasn't using, like, the chronology wasn't really about time. And then it's
but that's
like
what I actually loved about it, actually.
And he goes to I'm like, let's talk about X and finish it, or give me a time like in this time in his age. This Musk was 34 years. This is how he was thinking. Like at the end, I was like, who was he married to? Who? When? What did X do? What? And for a big book that you're trying to keep track of, you're like, why are we still talking about X? Are we done with Tesla? Oh no, we're back to PayPal. And you know, I kind of didn't like that order of chapters. And then the chapters are about married to so and so, but then it's all. I just thought the structure was. I didn't enjoy the structure of the book.
So what I liked, I actually liked it a lot because I don't think he went with structure from a age point of view, right? But he went with structure from an emotional point of view. Like I said, when you started feeling about a certain way about Elon. When he moved to America, he was a certain type. When he was in X, he was a certain type of person, and they showed that within that the time he was at X. When he was at, in fact, the most inspirational parts of it was when actually they were talking a lot about SpaceX, because that was the first time you actually saw Elon not think about himself. All the other ones like Tesla, yes, he wasn't thinking about himself and everything, but it wasn't like for the greater good of humanity, you know. Even Twitter, it wasn't like a greater good great for humanity, but for the actual SpaceX, it was a bit of a different side of him, and that's why I liked it a lot, because it didn't just go normal the way everyone does.
Maybe
You could read.
I think that you're really smart for seeing that it was a emotional chronology of this is where he is, and that's why it's like at this point where they were negotiating X, this where his emotions were, and then he went to Tesla, and then he came back to SpaceX as a different emotional being. But because you don't see Elon Musk as a person, but more of as he's a self-employed person. Like he's just work. There are bits about his personal life, but it's like not really deep. Even the wives are like, he's generally an absent person from real life. So you expect that the whole story weighs more on his work than the person. But it's genius of you to sort of see that it's actually an emotional chronology than a time frame or work frame or project based. So I'll read it that way and see. And also because he doesn't grow emotionally. It's not like he just goes through those dark, you know, it's like, so it's nice. I'll review it. I'll reread it with that lens.
Yeah.
So. And overall, I'll give it. I think
no, but you can't. Don't say it yet. Don't say it yet. At the end.
Okay.
At the end. At the end. Okay, Angie, maybe we'll go to you now.
Yes. No, as you say, it's a big one. I was reading it at some point. We traveled. We had a road trip, and I started reading it for my husband as he was driving us, and to the point that we would stop or whatever, and he would say, like, when he would continue driving, like, where are we now? Like, he was just so.
Wow.
Like, to the
That's
point
cool.
that he said,
that's actually very cool.
I said, no, I'm not gonna finish the whole book in the ride. And he says, no, but I'll borrow it from you because I need to finish it. So he was really interested in it. Yeah, because what we knew about Elon personally is, he's a Tesla guy and he's having some projects that he wants something in space and stuff. I didn't have a clue of really. I knew that he was from South African origin, but I never knew, and I think I knew he was a bit eccentric, a bit crazy. But coming from his childhood, the traumas, what he was exposed to, the parents, right? So as you say, I felt very, very sorry. I felt like this guy had a very tough upbringing, right? But it was interesting to see how he was also refuged in books. And it's interesting because actually today I was talking to somebody that is in these teenage years and was complaining about the not fitting in and stuff, you know, the teenage that now they want to fit in certain groups and stuff. And we were talking about if you want to do exceptional things and great things, right? You don't have to fit in or to look into fit into the norm, to the average. And I think Elon really fits exactly what I was saying, because he was not a normal kid, you know, like devouring all these books and this interest and this passion is not really normal. And I think obviously probably he was also bullied because being the odd one and the weird one and the crazy. But if you see him right now where he is, right, millionaire, the richest man in the world, it takes that to be odd and not to conform to what is already there. And we saw it, some of the quotes that really stuck with me is the fact that he was so puzzled about the technology. Like, if we haven't had any more progress, is because it's about consistency, isn't it? We got to Mars and they landed in the moon or whatever, and that's it. And what else? So he has gone to that questioning of what it is, to question beyond what we have done, to question beyond what is written. And it's something that really inspired me to really pursue consistency, pursue the beyond. I think he was just thinking, in all senses, he's always thinking out the box. And then the persistency. He had in his mind that he was going to go to America, and he wanted to exploit the fact of that his roots, he has some American roots, right, with the grandparents and stuff, but it didn't work like that. But how at the end of I think when you really have in your mind, in your heart, that purpose, I think God makes it happen somehow. But the fact is that he was not really persisting, he never persisted. It's like he saw himself doing it, and he's just so determined that for me it was inspiring. And then another thing about his own entrepreneurial journey and all the ideas that he has had that are crazy or out of the box that people think because he's not the norm, is that he's, as you were saying, you were saying that he's trying to solve a problem. And for example, what he's doing about Mars, that he wants to have another place where we can have the civilization, because at the end of the day, he thinks like the world, it's going to come to the end, and what are we going to do? So he's thinking big, and he's seeing the bigger picture. But a lot of people in other of the models of the business, they were saying, so how are you going to make money? And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we really focus, yes, the money, but the way he sees things in reverse, right? Like, cover that need or cover that thing, money will follow. Like, he's not really interested in the beginning making calculations, I guess, of how much is he gonna make, how much is he gonna sell, how much is he gonna, because for example, the trips are not there yet to Mars. There are not trips. He wants to, but he's not thinking how much money is he gonna make, and he's just too focused on that, on the end, right? Before counting the money. So that was another thing that really inspired me, to look for causes and businesses, ideas to solve problems, to solve big issues, right? And I think you forgot, you were talking about, Marisela said something about PayPal, but the first business I wanted that for me was quite interesting was the Zip2, like some sort of Google Maps,
that's
right?
what it was called, Zip2, yes.
City app or city maps or something like that.
Yes.
That it was not there.
That's what
so
it was
it's
called.
to look for opportunities for something that is missing, and to bring the innovation. Sometimes I when I first came to Africa, and here in Botswana particularly, when I was seeing ladies selling the same vegetables one after another, right? Like, it's a whole, but they sell exactly the same. And I was telling my husband, why doesn't one of them does the tomatoes into a sauce, or like, why like a bit of, you cannot be selling exactly the same as the other person, just try to twist it a bit, like something like that. So I felt like this is what the guy has always done, like the innovation part. Look for an opportunity and then innovate, make it different. What is different from what is already there? So I have very mixed feelings about Elon. I have also been watching some of his interviews. It was very emotional when he loses the son as well, and know the turmoil, that relationship with the father. I think he tried, like when he tried to move back with the father, didn't work. And then he loses the son in the USA, and he still calls him and he buys a house and still didn't work. Like, I think he has tried and he probably wants to heal that part, but it's really not working. So it's
Listen,
a lot
Elon's
of
dad
emotion, and the way
is
that he
crazy.
is also so impulsive. As you say, I also get angry, like he's so inhuman, but as the boho is saying, like, well, it's also part of his own, the way his mind works, which is good at the end of the day. And I also applaud and the kind of CEO that he is. Like, I was at some point, they were not even having a proper apartment when they were in the SIP2 and the PayPal, that they were sleeping there in a couch or under the desk. And then when the brother says as well that when they moved together and they were trying to make this work out, the company, they would be eating fast food, and he knows the whole menu because they were just there in these cheap places or eating just from a box of cereal. So it takes a lot of sacrifices, and I think in where we are right now at this stage, a lot of wrong mindset about entrepreneurship is that we have instant gratification, or businesses. If you're a business owner, immediately you are meant to be rich. We don't. I think we live in this fast pace and microwave things that we want everything fast, and we don't see, because it's been ages. You're talking about 2003, 2000 when so if you look at now, it's been like 20 something years in the making, and it's not as easy. We see Elon and we think like, oh, okay, he's lucky, but everything that brought him to this point, right? So it's very inspirational in the sense of persistence and delaying instant gratification. When he bought that car, the luxury car as well, it was part of his earning from that company that he sold, but he didn't go crazy. Like, he was really also quite thinking of the big purpose, like the delayed gratification. So for me, yeah, those are basically the takeaways that I want to draw, also applying into my life, and in the terms of entrepreneur, to be a business person. I'm not gonna rate it yet, but I agree with
be as crazy as him, please.
Yes, I agree with the boho about the same feeling about it was at times confusing, the in and out, and it comes and it goes. Like, for me, yeah, I wish it was like more structured in that sense of events to SIP or PayPal, and like it was a bit sometimes.
Everything, you guys, I think that's how vast this book is. You spoke about one thing, and everything you spoke about, Angie didn't even mention it once, and she had her own thing she spoke. Like, there's so much detail about Elon. You almost feel like if he was here, you could speak to each other and be like, "Ah, Musmadan, I know you. You can't tell me anything. I know you." But there's so much detail in him. I think there's something you said around how his upbringing, obviously, and how, that's what I wanted. So one thing that I really, really, really appreciate about him, and he reminds me of John D. Rockefeller, is that he loves his family. He really, really, really loves his family. He'll fight with his wives or girlfriends or whatever, like anything and nothing else, but he appreciates companionship a lot, and he loves his family like nothing else. I mean, his whole thing is he wants to repopulate the world as much as possible. That's why he wants to have 50 kids kind of thing. But he really does love his family. There's a big part of the book where they talk about when he's with X and X is like playing around, and he lets X be X, basically. And that's the kind of father he is, because he was raised in a way like that, where they let him do a lot of the stuff, let him learn. But one thing I do appreciate is that he loves his family, and he'll do anything for his family. Is there anyone, before I come to Doc, is there anyone else that has read this book? Ms. Van, have you read this book, Cariso?
Oh, I've not gotten a copy as yet. I'm in a public space. I wonder if I'm audible. I've not read the book yet, but I hope one day we'll get to host the gent and hear him speak to us as well. You guys raised some really funny, interesting points.
Listen, like there's so many of them, so many of them. Like, yeah, I can't even start to say. I can open up a chapter and I tell you a sentence of what they're saying about him, and you'll be blown away. Like, how is this guy even? So it's quite interesting. You should get yourself a copy, please, or at least listen to it.
And look, the fact that he's got a lot of kids, I didn't know that for whatever reason. Yeah, I guess that was not public information necessarily because he hardly talks about his life. So immediately when you said that, I'm like, I need to read this book.
Oh, here's a funny story.
The most interesting one is when he said the kids he had with his executive.
Yes.
And you're like, and I'm like, since when is Elon the player? Like, what's wrong with it? Like, women do this with Elon? Like, they're willing to have side kids that nobody knows about. And I think that's.
So I was about to say, so the part in the book where they talk about Elon having kids with his executive, one of the executive. Now, he didn't sleep with his executive, he was just a sperm donor, right? But no one knew about these twins. Yes. So no one knew about these. Yeah, it was literally just a donor that he was just a donor, basically.
Oh, nobody says that. They're like, it's almost like he's been having a secret affair with an employee.
So I think that's why even. Yeah. So there's a part in the book where they say, so he's a sperm donor, but then they don't mention the fact. So in the book, they also mention the fact that he didn't tell anyone. It was just him and the executive that knew that he had these twins. And then they say only when Grimes got, I think, the second born, or yes, when he was about to have his second born, did Elon, after that one was born, did Elon then tell them about the twins? I was like, man, this guy, like, who knows how many other kids he has? Like, just in jail. Spreading his seed, literally. But anyway.
And that's how
actually, yeah, there's this guy who calls himself the God. What's his name? A young chap. He has a podcast. The name just escaped. Penwell.
Oh, yes, in South Africa, yes. Penwell.
Maybe he got inspiration or they inspire each other because Penwell seems to have
doesn't have as much money as Elon.
Like Nick Cannon also.
That's some good spice, Melissa.
Just saying. Okay, Doc, maybe we give it to you because I think you're the only other person that read it.
Vina. Hey, okay, Vina, that was like a spanner in the works. Thank you so much. Oh, I didn't expect that. Anyway, so yeah, I enjoyed the book. I think I mean, I must sort of confess I'm a Walter Isaacson fan. So I think I've read all his books, except one. There's one that I haven't read. So when he writes, I'm one of those who will pre-book. So I had a bit of a tension because when he wrote Steve Jobs, it was during that time of the Twitter thing, and there was a whole controversy. And he was leaning towards Trump, and and I was a bit torn to say, I don't like the subject matter, but I like the person who writes the subject matter because I've read most of his books. I mean, Walter Isaacson for me is one of the best biographers. I mean, Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci for me is his best biography. And in fact, he says something quite interesting about Leonardo da Vinci. He says, I mean, Leonardo da Vinci died 100 years or so ago, but he says, and his books are thick. I mean, most of his biographies are thick. And he says, I had so much material writing Leonardo da Vinci than writing Steve Jobs while Steve Jobs was still alive. And I think that was quite like Colin's biography. And then Einstein, he wrote Einstein's biography. Also, you can see it's thick. Codebreaker, the lady who came up with CRISPR. And then, of course, I don't know if you have read this, Melissa, The Innovators, also quite an interesting book. So that
was my first book that I read, and it blew me away. It blew me. In fact, Steve Jobs was the first one, and that was my second book that I read from him.
And you mentioned earlier, there's another book of Elon Musk by Ashley Vance.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, it's also quite good. But I think for me, I'll always gravitate towards Walter Isaacson's biographies for a number of reasons. I think Isaacson does a thorough research of the subject matter. He does numerous and hours of interviews. He follows his subject matter. So he immerses himself. It's as if he's like an actor and he's trying to immerse himself into a role. So he immerses himself into the subject matter. But also his narrative skills. I mean, there would be paragraphs where I would read. I mean, he's just a gifted storyteller. I mean, he's got this way of weaving anecdotes and historical events. And I just, we would read a paragraph and I would say to myself, this is Isaacson, because you could pick up how he writes. But I also find that he's got a balanced perspective. And I think it came out quite a lot with this book. But I think also with Steve Jobs, I think he's got this balanced perspective of trying to show us. So he tries to avoid the hero type of writing, and he also doesn't shy away from, exploring the subjects and contradictions and failures. So he's got this way of bringing these two sides, and at some point you're not so sure whether you like this guy or you don't like this guy. So it's got that way of, and in fact, in most of his books, and when you even read Leonardo da Vinci's biography, you look at this guy, it's like, this guy's a genius. And then later on, you're like, this guy is a moron, because he's got this way of balancing perspective. But I think what I like the most about Isaacson's writing is he always looks at his subjects' impact on history, on culture, on society. And I think with Elon Musk also, he does that very well. He sort of tries to, and I think Tebogo somehow alluded to, this might, and he was comparing Musk to Gates. And Walter Isaacson has this way of saying, let's look at the history. How will history look at this guy, for instance? How will history judge Elon Musk? And I think we all agree that he has actually had an impact. And as I was listening to Angie, and I even wrote it here, I somehow, and I think it's something that came out just listening to Angie, is I don't think, and I might be wrong, I don't think this guy is motivated by being #1 richest person in the world. I don't know. As I read the book, it doesn't come out that this guy is like, all he wants is, guys, the #1 thing is, I want to be the richest person. Tesla has to be the richest. I think what I I'm sort of coming to appreciate about Musk is he's an impact guy. So he looks at the thing, he says, we need to, planetary, the fact that climate change and all these things, and there's this existential crisis, and he says we need to do something about this. We can't just sit and do nothing, In one of his interviews, TED Talk interviews, they ask him, but why are you doing all these things? You have made money. Why do you still continue doing this? And he sort of says, we as human beings, we have this way of taking for granted that progress, we have this thing in our minds that progress happens automatically, right? And he says, actually, it doesn't. Progress in the world doesn't happen automatically. Someone has to take the initiative to bring progress. And he gives an example of, for instance, and you can watch that because this is in the talk. He gives an example of, for instance, the Egyptians, for instance. If you look at how the Egyptians managed to build the pyramids in those ancient days, and you look at the maths and the technology that went into building pyramids, what did they do after building the pyramids? And he says they went to sleep. After building the pyramids, they didn't build on the innovation of building. They didn't progress from there, He mentions the taking a man to the moon, NASA. And he says, what did NASA do after taking a man to the moon? They retired the space shuttle program, right? And he says, we tend to think that progress in the world happens automatically, and it doesn't. And I think that's why he does all these crazy things that he does. But coming to the book, one of the criticisms about Walter Isaacson has been that he tends to somehow oversimplify things, I don't know whether it's a criticism, but I think I appreciate that. Another criticism of him is also that he only writes books about successful, influential figures. And sort of his books don't have diversity of those who have not actually succeeded. And then they say that it tends to sort of overshadow, he tends to hero worship. So yeah, I mean, without repeating what everybody has said, I also, as I was reading the introduction, the first few chapters, I was asking myself, is this the South Africa that Elon Musk grew up in? Because yes, when we grew up in the township, yes, it was violent, but in the book, for me, it felt overhyped, right? It felt too dramatized. Yeah, we are one of the most violent countries in the world, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if white people at the time were so under threat from violence than us Black people. It's an argumentative point, but I think I'm gonna push back on this one. I think he's got an extreme view of South Africa, and especially as a white person, I think he's maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm not. I didn't grow up as a white person in South Africa, but
can I just put something in what you're saying there? I think that a part of what was written there was more Isaacson than Elon. Yeah. I think Elon obviously had a bit of things, but one of the things I've realized about reading a lot of, in fact, which book was it that we read? But it was a book, it almost sounds like this person, they were putting themselves into South Africa, but they never lived in South Africa. And that's exactly what you're saying now. Yeah. And that's exactly how I read it as well. I was like, okay, this sounds like more an American person or whoever, foreign person trying to experience South Africa without actually being in South Africa.
Yeah, no, that's possible.
I felt like he had a story from some guy in Soweto who described South Africa then, and he plagiarized that and he imagined it happening to him. It was like in a train being pocketed with a knife, a white guy. Like, no. That's a Black guy's experience from Soweto. Like,
exactly.
It's like plagiarism. Elon is.
I'm like, and also, is that the reason? I wanted to ask: is that the reason he hates or he doesn't like South Africa? Does that come out in the book?
He actually said as if he was ghetto, like as if he was a tough guy like that. Like in South Africa, could go with that. In the train, the chance of being hijacked, being beaten up, slaps here, fights breaking out. And he's like, when I went to Canada, it was a completely different experience. I didn't see any of that. And he kind of like, you didn't expect that kind of safety. I'm like, Elon, everything that you said could not have happened to a white boy in an all boys high in Pretoria. You're lying. No. That's a Soweto guy story. You listen to a documentary of a Black guy telling you that, go Park Station. This is what could happen to you.
No. Can you imagine Elon Musk kind of go to rain and the guy was saying peanuts, peanuts? Like,
no. I was like, no, he's never been in any public transport like that. He's like, yeah, you're right. I think that was either they had somebody talking about South Africa that way and they completely copied and pasted.
Yeah.
And so they didn't realize that.
And this is the guy where the dad owned a mine. What is he doing in a train? Like
going to a festival in a train. And I was like, why are you going to a festival in a train?
No,
in the 80s.
No, I struggled with that. I really struggled with that. I'm like, no, man. Is this a South Africa that I grew up in? And I'm trying to reconcile. No, it's not like Elon Musk is was poor. And if it was that dangerous, I'm definitely sure his parents would not have allowed him to use public transport the way he describes it. So yeah, I struggled with that. You know, but I like what Tebogo spoke about, about there's a part of him that is either, I don't know, it's a genetic thing that is not working, functioning properly. So, and this reminds me, I'm a fan of Big Bang Theory, right? And I kept on saying, but this is Sheldon. As I'm reading this book, I'm like, this is Sheldon.
Yes.
Like, like it's as if Big Bang Theory was done with him in mind, and I mean, who says in a party, to a girl, do you ever think about electric cars? Like, what? And this kid, I was like, this guy is weird, right? But yeah, I think there's this dissonance or this conflict between him. On the one hand, is this hard, difficult person who issues emails to staff that if they don't come to work during the pandemic, they must consider themselves out of work. This is a guy who, when he was building in college, when he was building a thing, I mean, he's like a 6-hour work week, 60 hours work week kind of a guy. At some point, he would sleep at work just to maximize the time of going back home and sleeping and waking up and coming back to work. He's like, no, I'd rather sleep here. And this is not something that he only did when he was still building his Zip 2, but he also did it when he was building Tesla, right? Where he would have
all of it, even Twitter.
Even
Twitter, he slept at Twitter.
Even the boring
with the boring company also, he did that.
So
all the companies.
He's got these extremes. On the one hand, when he feels quite a lot, like he cries, he's quite emotional. On the other, where he gets to be this kind of hard person that is almost, at some point he was accused of racism, but yeah, I mean, and I think for me, the takeaway in conclusion, the takeaway from this book is, and it's a question that comes out over and over and over when I talk to entrepreneurs out there, is do you need to be, and I think it reinforces this American approach to entrepreneurship, do you need to be this ruthless person to be successful, right? Do you need to be this difficult person to work with? Do you need to and I think, not taking away from the fact that he's going to be, history will remember him as one of the guys who have actually impacted the world in a more positive way. But also in doing that, in achieving that accolade, do you have to have this management style that is difficult to work with, that is pushing people relentlessly? Because even Steve Jobs had those same similar qualities, right? Of firing people in the morning. I mean, there's this story of if you are going to work in the morning and you meet Steve Jobs in the lifts, and you both get into the lift, and before you get to floor 2 or 3, he asks you, what are you doing here? What work do you do here? And you don't give him a satisfactory answer. By the time you get to your floor, if he's still there, you are fired, right?
Oh, God.
To a point where people, when they saw Jobs on the lift, they took the stairs. They're like, I'm not going in there. They took the stairs. That's how crazy. And that's why he was fired at Apple, because of his management style. It's coming back again with Elon Musk. Here's this guy, he's a genius, but with flaws, right? So he's a genius with extreme flaws. So what message are we sending to entrepreneurs? That it's okay to push people relentlessly, and not have the heart, or if you want to make a mark in your world. So yeah, I mean, and I think Isaacson presents these two extreme worldviews quite well. Here is a success, he's a genius, but he's also a moron, he's a difficult person to work with. And some people say, is colonizing Mars a noble pursuit, or is it a billionaire's ego trip? Here's this guy who's trying to have an impact in the world, but he's got too many kids and blah, blah, blah. So he's trying to juxtapose these two extreme worlds using Steve Jobs as a subject match. And I find that for me, what comes out is Is he a superhero or is he a villain? Yes, he's impactful. So for me, that's what comes out. But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing book. It's an amazing story. And on the structure, I agree with Tebogo to say it's a bit difficult to mark his journey in terms of his age, moving. But what I love about the structure on the other side is each chapter is independent. And I think we discussed this, Marisol, at some point. You can start each chapter, and it's as if, he introduces you to that chapter without saying you need to read the previous chapter before you read this chapter, And I think that worked for me. So yeah, great book. Thank you.
Okay, there's one thing you mentioned now about his behavior, right? And it's what I want to finish off with. It's on page 7, actually, right at the start of the book. But before I read it, I want the conclusions from maybe Angie and then Tebogo, and then I'll read this and then we'll rate the book, because I think, and then after that we'll finish. I think we have like 8 minutes left. Angie, quick conclusion.
Quick conclusion: never judge a book by its cover. I used to think totally different, but through reading the whole story, the perspectives, the people involved, all these interviews that the author had with them while writing this biography, getting all those points, because Elon could be saying something about the father has a different story. So it's always good to have two sides of the story. So for me, it was eye-opening in a lot of senses, business and as a person. I would give it an 8 because I'm not quite comfortable with the structure. I didn't quite enjoy it. Yeah, that's my take.
All right, Tebogo?
I think I went in with an 8, taking 2 away from the structure, but after your point of view, and I also like what Doc says about each chapter is actually an independent story. So although it's a long book, when you reread it, you can pick each chapter from, and that's why like when you read about something else and later on is like X, you're like, oh, I thought we were done because the chapter felt complete, and that will be frustrating because you think, oh, I thought we left that, you made the point and whatever. But I think it actually, as much as he's erratic and everything, it comes back to what I agree with Angie, like never judge a book by its cover, because you see all these interviews, he's a very eccentric character. But one thing's for sure, and I think that's what Walter said, that Elon has never been about money. He's got no desire to be a billionaire. He's never, he's chasing a big vision. And something that we all didn't even mention was the reason he bought X. I think it was, he had a conversation with somebody about AI and the dangers of AI. And the guy made a comment that, if we are irrelevant, we should perish. And Elon was like, that's a very careless statement. And for that careless statement, it's almost like he went ahead and invested in AI in a way that makes it ethical and preserves it.
For OpenAI.
I don't want to be
That's where OpenAI came from.
I don't want to get to a point where humans are pets. So I think he's got a greater humane or human interest. And that, like, I feel like he could easily be a president. Also, something that he did that I think...
No, not a president.
No, you'll get rid of all the idiots and strip them to space. But something that he had a very fair judgment of both Barack and Trump. Like he didn't over exaggerate. He was like, Barack gets it. He likes him, but he doesn't think he's capable or he's going to do anything about the conversation they had. And then at some point, it's like, Trump is crazy, but I'll give him a chance. And it's like, okay, if you see Trump for this guy that he is, then you understand his whole behavior. It's more consistent. That this guy is just putting up a show. So you're never to take him serious, and it's crazy. But I think he's got tendencies of giving people a chance. So generally, I think it's like, I think when you...
He is quite fair.
Yeah, never judge a book by
really quite fair,
yeah, so
okay.
I like it. I'm going to be compassionate with the structure and give it a 9.
Okay, all right. Doc, what is your...
I think it's obvious. I'll give it a 9.
Okay.
Because I think what I've learned is to, and it's something that I don't know if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. I've learned to separate the character of the person from what they're trying to achieve. And I think what Musk is trying to achieve is something that is important for the world. So I think for me, I'm able to sort of tune out the noise about his flaws and everything, and I focus on what he's trying to achieve. And I think, multiplanetary living, I'm a big green sustainability person. And I think he's doing a very good job of bringing that topic, because it was very hard to bring that topic into the mainstream media. He's doing it in a more fashionable way. Suddenly people want to buy Tesla cars, even though I think they're ugly. I don't think Tesla cars are beautiful, but I think the technology.
No ways, they're so beautiful, those things.
No. Those things are when it comes to design, no. The technology, yes. The technology, I give it to him. But the design, I'm like, I mean, you see that Cybertruck? That thing is...
No, okay, now you're talking about Cybertruck. The other ones are nice, dog, not Cybertruck.
Anyway, but I think what he's trying to do is quite important. And I think he's championing a good cause. So I'll give it a 9. Yeah. As a person, I can ignore his faults and whatever, because I know most geniuses have those flaws. So I'll give it a 9.
Okay. All right, I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to tell you my end thing, and then I'm going to rate it, and then we'll be done. Give me 2 minutes. So it says, it's page 7. It says, when I was reporting on Steve Jobs, his partner Steve Wozniak, said that the big question to ask was, did he have to be so mean, so rough, so cruel, so drama addicted? When I turned the question back to Woz at the end of my reporting, he said that if he was run Apple, he would have been kinder. He would have treated everybody there like family, and not like summarily spied people. Then he paused and added, "But if I'd run Apple, we may have never made Macintosh." And that's the question about Elon Musk. Could he be more chill and still? Could he be more chill and still be launching us to Mars and electric vehicle future? Now, the reason I read that is what we all been saying, right? And it's something that comes to mind. I was speaking to my friend about this, is all of this worth it, right? Now, to everyone else that is not in the workspace that Elon is, it probably is worth it, because here's a electric car, here's a space shuttle to go. We can just, if we have the money, go and get it, right? Internet that is controlled from space, those things. It's beneficial for all of us, but for those that are in and around those companies, is it really worth it for someone to be that mean, that rough, that he literally is everything Steve Jobs is, and even more in a way, right? Because Steve Jobs at least had humanity point for him. If this person is on the spectrum and only thinks one way, and wherever he goes, he tarnishes, is it really worth it? And the question my friend actually asked me is like, Mali, does one person having that much power, is it good for us? You know what I mean? Now, I don't know. I'm not the one to say if it is or not. But one thing for sure is that if he wasn't like this, definitely we would not be where we are now as a human race. We would not be challenging things the way they need to be challenged so that growth might come, And one thing for sure is I do respect this guy. I've always really respected him. Because I always knew what I've followed him here and there. But this book actually brought out what it actually took. And if any of us want to build even something, even just one part of a business, we really know what it takes to build a business like. Because if it's nothing like that, I mean, all these guys, there's a podcast I listen to called The Founders. All these guys that have been founders and that are founders have all had such passion, such drive to build whatever they need to build, so much so that people think they're crazy and that they are mean, or in some sense, not all of them, but a lot of them have been like that. And sometimes, not even sometimes, most of the time, you need that kind of character, because you don't want to be beaten around playing things like it's fine, we'll do it tomorrow, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. And that's why sometimes you need to be a bit rough in a way that it's more rough around the passion rather than rough around you just being mean to people, So that's what I think. So with that said, I give it a 9.5. I really do I put it on par with Shoe Dog, because it really was an amazing book. It really, 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 really. In fact, like I said, I started reading it and I was underlining quite a lot. And I thought, I'm going to take too much time if I underline a lot. Let me go listen. So I listened to it, and now I'm going to read it again and just start just doing the underlining thing and getting some principles out of it. So yeah.
We were on the same page when you say it's 9.5. You lost me when you say it's on the same pie with Shoe Dog. No.
Dog, I think
Shoe Dog. No ways. It's not far off. It's not far off. But Shoe Dog is still number one. Yeah.
I'm not saying from a journey point of view. I'm not saying from there, because Shoe Dog takes you on a journey. Shoe Dog makes you feel like you will take over the world tomorrow.
Yeah, now you got me back. All right. Thanks, Smiley.
Up to you, Doc.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. We are 2 minutes over time. Apologies for that. Next book, Sia. This was recommended by Blondie, right? So we are here next, I think 13th of Feb. It's not, I mean, compared to this, it's not so bad. So I'm looking forward to this. If we could get Sia to come and join us, that would be awesome. But yeah, we are here. And then, 13th of Feb, the day before Valentine's. So please, guys, read before you go out there and have fun. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great.
Thanks, Toboko. Thanks, NG, Malisela, Kahiso. Thank you, Awelani, Lungo.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hopefully next
Thank
time you guys will also form part of the discussion. Vina, you don't have an excuse. The book is local. So I'm looking forward to your inputs. Awelani, you're welcome. Lungo, you're welcome. Kahiso, you are also welcome, guys, for your inputs also.
Definitely.
Yeah. So thank you so much, guys, and have an awesome evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.